In Oscar Wilde's haunting novel, The Picture of Dorian Gray, the tormented protagonist hails a hansom cab under the cover of night. Dressed in common clothes, he urges the driver eastward, away from the high society streets of Mayfair, and onto the fog-choked alleyways of the London's East End. Their destination? An opium den. A place Wilde described as a den of horror, where the memories of old sins could be destroyed by the madness of sins that were new. Dorian Gray, of course, is a fictional character. So too is Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson, who also wandered into the Docklands in search of criminals, vice, and the black market underworld. Join me as I journey into the shadows of the London Dockland. Once the heart of Britain's global trade, later descended into poverty, crime and vice, eventually facing annihilation in the 20th century, now reborn as a luxury residential area. We'll uncover the truth behind the Victorian legends and find out just how far fiction strayed from fact. Let's start at the beginning. The story of London's Docklands begins long before the construction of the formal docks. The River Thames has served as a vital artery of commerce since Roman times. The area's maritime character began to take shape in 1614, when the East India Company began using the anchorage at Blackwall for its trading vessels. As maritime traffic grew, the riverside districts east of the city developed distinctive identities. Merchants faced chronic delays and congestion at the official London docks, prompting many ships to unload downriver at places like Wapping and Limehouse, where, as one historian put it, night smuggling became rampant. These were natural haunts for sailors, smugglers, and anyone looking to profit from the grey area between legal trade and the black market. Some of London's oldest riverside pubs date from this period and still stand today, offering tangible links to that time. The Prospect of Whitby, now a fashionable gastropub, is said by some to date back to the 1520s, and was once nicknamed the Devil's Tavern due to its clientele of smugglers, pirates, and local criminals. The town of Ramsgate, just upriver, claims 17th century origins. It was named for sailors from Ramsgate who moored their ships at Wapping Old Stairs before heading inside for a drink. Further downriver, the Grapes in Limehouse has served sailors and dockers since 1583. Its narrow terrace is said to be where Sir Walter Raleigh set sail for the New World. Legend tells of watermen who drowned drunken patrons for their coin, grim reminders of the risks that once haunted riverside life. These pubs acted as a cultural crossroads, where cargo changed hands, backhand deals were made, and press gangs sometimes lurked in the shadows, ready to drag drunken men into naval service. As a local innkeeper's wife remembered, "They came in the night, 6 of them, and took our Jack to serve His Majesty. We never saw him again." While the work was plentiful, the streets of Wapping and its neighbouring districts grew dangerously overcrowded in the 18th century. Narrow alleys and cramped tenements housed families far beyond their capacity, often with multiple generations packed into a single room. Sanitation was poor, waste clogged the Thames side streets, and outbreaks of disease such as cholera and typhus were common. Poverty was endemic, breeding an environment where crime and desperation flourished. In these times, deterring would-be criminals was the preferred way to keep things in line. Near the Prospect of Whitby pub once stood Execution Dock, the go-to site for the execution of pirates and maritime criminals in London for over 4 centuries. It was here in 1701 that Captain William Kidd was hanged following his conviction for piracy. According to Admiralty tradition, Kidd's body was left hanging until it had been submerged by 3 tides, intended as a very public warning to others. Afterwards, his remains were gibbeted at Tilbury Point, publicly displayed for upwards of 3 years. The execution of Captain Kidd sent a powerful message. The Crown was determined to suppress piracy and maintain control over the vital Thames trade routes. It was a display that ironically inspired the rise of other famous pirates, such as Charles Vane, who would later face a similar end in the Caribbean. As crime along the river escalated in the 18th century, particularly theft from ships moored in the crowded Pool of London, the need for organised law enforcement became clear. In 1798, Magistrate Patrick Colquhoun and shipowner John Heriot founded the Thames River Police, headquartered in Wapping, tasked with preventing pilferage and protecting cargo. A customs officer reported, "We can scarcely apprehend a smuggler in Wapping without meeting resistance from the entire street, women pouring chamber pots from windows, while children whistle warnings." The Marine Police were a forerunner to the Metropolitan Police, and a vital step in the evolution of modern law enforcement. Remarkably, the Marine Police Unit still operates from a riverside location in Wapping today, continuing a legacy that began amid the lawlessness of London's 18th century docks. The turn of the 19th century marked a watershed moment in the history of London's Docklands. After centuries of ships crowding the Thames and unloading at makeshift wharves, purpose-built commercial docks finally reshaped the riverside. The West India Dock Company opened its vast fortified facilities on the Isle of Dogs in 1802. It was followed swiftly by the London Dock Company at Wapping in 1805, and the East India Dock Company soon after. These massive engineering projects fundamentally altered both the physical and social landscape of East London. Construction required the clearance of entire neighbourhoods. The area was still densely populated, and hundreds of residents were evicted to make way for warehouses and secure perimeters. If gentrification had been the aim, then the local powers that be had another thing coming entirely. While the docks themselves were tightly regulated and guarded, complete with massive bonded warehouses and customs officers, the streets just beyond their walls became known for quite the opposite. This was the birth of sailortowns, neighbourhoods shaped entirely around the needs, temptations, and vulnerabilities of visiting sailors. After months at sea, crews poured into Shadwell, Limehouse, Ratcliff, and Wapping, pockets full of pay and ready to spend. In return, these streets offered endless diversions: grog shops, brothels, boarding houses, exotic animal dealers, pawnbrokers, and every variety of vice. Rag Fair, extending into Cable Street near the docks, was known in the 17th to 19th centuries as an area where the sex workers operated. We can get an idea of how it looked at the time with some of the surviving architecture. Smuggling was still rife in these redeveloped areas. Perhaps no site captures this hidden side of Docklands life better than the gun at Cold Harbour. This 18th century public house was said to be a haunt of Lord Nelson, who reportedly met Lady Emma Hamilton in a private room upstairs. But the gun's charm concealed a more clandestine history. Smugglers are known to have landed goods at its waterside and passed them through hidden tunnels. A spy hole remains in a secret staircase to this day, a throwback to the years where customs officers had to be watched as closely as the tides. The contrast between the order inside the docks and the chaos just beyond them became a defining feature of Docklands life. Sailortowns were where the Empire's seafaring workforce came to rest, revel, or ruin. Many sailors would never make it back to the sea, either robbed by crimps, dead from drink, or simply vanishing into the shadows of East London. Among the most notorious of these districts was Ratcliff Highway, now known simply as the Highway, where crime, vice, and commerce rub shoulders daily. It bears hints of the past amongst busy traffic. It also plays host to arguably the most grueling section of the London Marathon, an opinion that I can testify to. The area of Ratcliff itself had long been central to London's maritime world. From the reign of Elizabeth I, Ratcliff grew from a quiet riverside hamlet into one of the capital's busiest maritime hubs. Shipbuilders, merchants, and sailors crowded the streets, building and launching vessels that connected London to the world. Ratcliffe Cross, now marked only by a modest set of stairs, was once a symbolic heart of this imperial trade. For over 3 centuries, Ratcliff stood at the crossroads of the empire. But Ratcliffe's glory had faded, and the area had transformed into a slum, part of a wider network of dockside streets, where lodging houses provided temporary accommodation for the transient population of sailors and labourers. who flocked to the area in search of work. Sailortown, in both reality and myth, was a place of freedom and danger, liberty and loss. As John Binney, a police magistrate, put it in 1860, Shadwell is a sink of iniquity, a place where a man's pay vanishes overnight into the pockets of harlots and rum sellers. By the mid-Victorian period, London's Docklands had expanded significantly, with the opening of the Victoria Dock in 1855. This facility quickly became one of London's largest cargo hubs, handling unprecedented volumes of goods from across the British Empire. This massive scale of dock operations meant thousands of workers and sailors concentrated in the area, further intensifying the social character of these neighbourhoods. Life in the Victorian Docklands was characterised by extremes. The often slum-like homes of ordinary dock workers stood in stark contrast to the fine houses of the London Docks officials, which have survived at the Wapping Pierhead. This physical manifestation of the social hierarchy reflected the harsh economic realities of dockland communities. Unsurprisingly, the drinking culture reached its zenith during this period. The 36 pubs in the immediate area would have been packed with sailors and dock workers. These cramped dark venues were notorious for drunken brawls, fueled by huge amounts of beer and gin. The violence was so commonplace that heavy furniture was often nailed down to prevent it from being thrown during fights. The Docklands had become a vital engine of London's economy, a beating heart of imperial trade. Each dock had its own specialisation. Tens of thousands of men relied on them for work, but dockwork was notoriously precarious. While skilled roles like lightermen and stevedores offered stability and status, the majority of labourers were hired on a casual basis. Every morning, desperate men gathered at the gates, hoping to be picked. Many went home empty-handed. And yet, for all its hardships, the Docklands remained one of the most culturally dynamic parts of the capital. Sailors and traders arrived from across the globe, and immigrant communities, especially the Irish, Jewish and Chinese, put down roots near the riverside. Chinese-run businesses sprang up, including opium dens, which would later gain lurid fame in Victorian fiction. To reformers, the Docklands symbolised both imperial success and social collapse, a place teeming with wealth and vice, sweat and sin. A police report from Shadwell in 1848 went as far as to say, "Every second house sells spirits illegally, brothels operate under the sign of lodging, and the opium smoke flows like chimney soot from certain cellars." By the end of the 19th century, popular fiction helped cement the Docklands' reputation as a place of vice and mystery, often exaggerating the presence of these opium dens to heighten the sense of exotic menace. These literary portrayals fed Victorian anxieties about moral decay, immigration, and empire, transforming a struggling working-class district into a symbol of danger and decline in the public imagination. Respected broadsheet The Times wrote in the 1880s, "We urge the authorities to cleanse these nests of pestilence and depravity. Limehouse is no place for English virtue to thrive." The eye of Victorian London was firmly focused on the Docklands, and it wouldn't be long before the reformers got their wish. The dawn of the 20th century brought both consolidation and expansion to the London Docklands. In 1909, a major turning point arrived with the creation of the Port of London Authority, or PLA, which took over the management of all enclosed docks in London and Tilbury. This new administrative body ended decades of rivalry between private dock companies, aiming to bring efficiency and order to a chaotic but vital system. The opening of the King George V dock in 1921 was the last great infrastructural flourish of this imperial phase. Built to handle the vast transatlantic liners of the day, the dock was the most technically advanced yet, boasting deep water locks and extensive warehousing. But while the machinery of commerce grew more impressive, the human realities beneath it remained deeply unequal. Living conditions for the dockers and their families remained harsh. Despite periodic efforts at reform, wages were low and housing was overcrowded. The hiring system remained deeply precarious. While the hardy locals had weathered every storm that had been thrown at them, a new lethal threat was approaching from the skies, and it was like nothing that had been seen before. The outbreak of World War II marked a violent turning point for the London Docklands. Recognising the strategic importance of the port to Britain's economy and war effort, German bombers relentlessly targeted the area during the Blitz. Between 1940 and 1941, the docks and the surrounding neighbourhoods were pounded with incendiary bombs night after night. Whole streets vanished in flames. One witness, standing as far away as Hampstead Heath, recalled watching the eastern horizon glow red with fire, as if the very river itself had caught light. The devastation was immense. A third of all housing in the Docklands was destroyed, and critical infrastructure, wharves, warehouses, cranes and shipping lanes were left in ruins. In the decade after the war, there was a brief flicker of recovery. As Britain sought to rebuild its economy, trade through the port was revived. The 1950s saw a surge of activity, reminiscent of earlier times. Ships returned, goods flowed once more, and the dockers resumed their grueling work along the river's edge. But beneath the surface, a new threat was gathering. One not of bombs, but of obsolescence. In an interview, a local said that the work was gone. We waited at the gates, but the names weren't called. You couldn't feed your kids on promises. By the early 1970s, the writing was on the wall. The number of registered port workers plummeted from 32,000 in 1955 to just 12,000 by 1973. The once thriving wharves of Wapping, Limehouse, Millwall and the Royal Docks fell silent. Between 1980 and 81, the final commercial operations ceased altogether, leaving vast swaths of East London derelict. Warehouses were boarded up, cranes rusted where they stood. Generations of dockside culture and livelihood evaporated in a matter of years. The modern chapter of the Dockland story began in July 1981, when the London Dockland Development Corporation was established to spearhead the regeneration of one of London's most depressed and derelict areas. Covering 22 square kilometres across Newham, Tower Hamlets and Southwark, the organisation inherited a landscape scarred by decades of decline and neglect. Charged with an ambitious mission, they transformed the Docklands over 17 years into a vibrant commercial and residential hub. An official boasted that we're not just building skyscrapers, we're rebuilding London's future. Landmark projects such as Canary Wharf, London City Airport and the Excel Centre reshaped the physical and economic fabric of East London. These developments created more than 120,000 new jobs, and the once forgotten docks into some of the most sought-after housing in the city. From a notorious sailortown defined by poverty, vice and hardship, the Docklands have become a premier business district and a desirable place to live. Visitors today may find it hard to imagine the bawdy taverns filled with drunken sailors, the shadowy alleyways of smugglers, or the cramped slums that once dominated the riverbank. Still, traces of this vibrant, turbulent past remain. The Dockland story is one of relentless reinvention, from Roman riverside crossing, through Elizabethan smuggling and Victorian industrial might, to wartime destruction, post-industrial decline, and finally, 21st century resurgence. Each era has left layers of history embedded in the landscape, culture, and community, reminders that beneath the glass towers and modern developments lie echoes of a storied and enduring past. I wish more of the Sailortown architecture had survived the 20th century, but there is just about enough left to feed our imagination.
If you've made it to the end of the video, then thank you. I really value your time, and I'd like to run something past you. As you know, most of my videos up till now have been narrations, but going forward, I'd like to spend a bit more time in front of the camera and really tell the stories in a more engaging way. So if that's something you'd be interested in, please leave a comment below. I'd love to know what you think. Otherwise, I'll see you again next time.